In this PowerPoint presentation, we will go over hemoglobin's basic structure and consequently its function. Then we'll look at hemoglobin concentrations and how they affect overall human health. And then we'll get a little more specific and find out how hemoglobin and COVID-19 interact with each other. Hemoglobin is a red blood cell made up of 4 subunits. Each one of the subunits is comprised of one polypeptide chain and a heme prosthetic group. Hemoglobin has a quaternary structure common to many other globular proteins. The amino acids of each subunit in hemoglobin mostly form alpha helices. Hydrogen bonding stabilizes these helical sections. There are 2 different polypeptide chains in mature adult hemoglobin. They are called alpha and beta chains. The alpha chain is 141 amino acid residues in length, and the beta chain is 146 amino acid residues in length. Because hemoglobin has 2 alpha and 2 beta subunits, it has been called a dimer of dimers. As stated in the previous slide, each one of the 4 subunits contains a heme prosthetic group. The prosthetic group is a bound unit that a protein requires for carrying out its specific biological function. Hemoglobin's function is to transport oxygen from the lungs and deliver it to the tissues. It will then pick up carbon dioxide in order for it to be expelled from the body. Hemoglobin can also bind competitive inhibitors such as carbon monoxide, which binds 250 times stronger than oxygen, meaning that when hemoglobin binds carbon monoxide, its ability to transfer oxygen from the lungs to the tissues is greatly reduced. The heme group has an iron ion in the middle of a ring known as porphyrin. This iron ion is where oxygen will bind when it's picked up. Heme needs 6 coordination sites. There is 1 from oxygen, 4 from the nitrogens in the ring, and the last from a histone residue on the side. Blood actually gets its red color from the iron-containing heme. Iron is a crucial nutrient for many life forms, and even viruses need an iron source for survival. Oxygen binding to heme is a reversible process. A heme group that binds oxygen varies with the partial pressure of oxygen. The sigmoidal shape of an oxygen binding equilibrium curve shows that binding of oxygen is a cooperative process, and hemoglobin is known as a cooperative protein. This means that when one subunit picks up an oxygen molecule, it then becomes easier for the other subunits to bind oxygen as well. This is an example of positive cooperativity. Hemoglobin basically exists in 2 different conformations or transition states, although there is research suggesting that each of these 2 transition states have transition states of their own. The 10th state, also known as the T state, has a low affinity for oxygen. It is a more compacted form, making oxygen less likely to bind to its active site. The R state, or relaxed state, has a higher affinity for oxygen. The molecule in this state can be thought of as open for business. It is because of these dynamic states that hemoglobin is so effective for oxygen transport, due to its ability to change with the environment. Hemoglobin concentrations alone appear to be a predictor of cardiovascular disease and all-cause mortality. A study was done in South Korea where approximately 170,000 men and 120,000 women over the age of 40 were studied over an 8-year period. Anemia is defined by the World Health Organization as hemoglobin counts less than 13 grams per deciliter for men and less than 12 grams per deciliter for women. The study found that having either low or high hemoglobin counts will increase one's risk of cardiovascular disease and all-cause mortality. High hemoglobin concentrations of greater than or equal to 60 grams per deciliter for men and greater than or equal to 14 grams per deciliter for women increase risk of cardiovascular disease and all-cause mortality, but not as greatly as low hemoglobin concentrations. The lower the hemoglobin concentrations, the less iron is available for the body to utilize. Women are more at risk for low iron due to blood loss caused by menstruation and pregnancy. Iron is a crucial nutrient needed for both living organisms and viruses. During the current COVID-19 pandemic, it was found that men are much more at risk for death than women. There's a theory that there is a low iron phenotype that may have evolved to prevent infection. Viruses, as well as some bacteria and fungi, have methods of taking iron from their hosts. It is believed hemoglobin is one way of extracting iron from hosts, while some viruses attack hepcidin, which is a protein that regulates the circulation of iron in the human body. It is believed that iron deficiency could reduce the amount of nucleic acids and proteins available to the virus. Also, it is hypothesized that an iron deficiency could lower the expression of adhesion molecules required for viral attachment. As you can see from the pictures on the current slide, there is a lower mortality rates in countries where a significant number of the population has an iron deficiency. It was originally believed that giving a population iron supplements might help mitigate virus, but if you already have deficiencies elsewhere, giving an iron supplement won't help. One of the first studies to come out during the COVID-19 pandemic showed that the viral protein ORF8 and surface glycoprotein inhibit heme metabolism by binding to porphyrin. Interestingly, an early examination of approximately 100 patients with coronavirus revealed that they had low levels of both hemoglobin and neutrophils. Patients also had elevated levels of serum ferritin in their blood, suggesting that the virus is attacking and denaturing hemoglobin and releasing the iron from heme. This causes a buildup of harmful iron ions in their body, which will increase levels of inflammation. Consequently, serum ferritin is produced by cells under stress in order to bind the free iron ions to hopefully reduce damage. This study was performed using conserved domain analysis, homology modeling, and molecular docking. In the second study from China, it was found that the viral envelope protein, its nucleocapsid phosphoprotein, and its ORF3A protein had heme-link sites. This showed that ORF3A could dissociate iron from heme. The study also revealed that two other viral proteins, ORF1AB and ORF10, carried out coordinated attacks on the 1-beta chain of hemoglobin. An important finding was also that deoxyhemoglobin seems to be more susceptible to attacks than oxidized hemoglobin. These coordinated attacks would cause there to be less functional hemoglobin to transport oxygen and carbon dioxide, which would produce negative coagulation effects and respiratory distress. When heme's anabolic pathway is interfered with, human disease is the expected outcome. Homology modeling, molecular docking, and conserved domain analysis were also used for this study as well. As an addendum to the last two studies, it should be noted that only computer modeling methods were used and analyzed from a bank of existing known molecules. The first study found that chloroquine would also be an effective treatment for COVID-19, but further research suggests otherwise. The virus probably has multiple vectors, and further research is indeed needed. Here are all the references I used for this presentation, and thank you for listening.